Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to another special episode of Endurance Chat. I'm Michael Zalavari, and we are talking about Bathurst once again. And joining me in this fantastic endeavour, I once again have Kiwi Chris Riddell. Good morning, Kiwi.
Good morning, Michael, and hello, everybody. It's been a long time. How you doing?
It has been a long time. How are you doing, Kiwi?
Yeah, well, I've undergone, as you know, some massive changes in my life. Having a pregnant fiance is interesting. Let's put it that way.
Woo! This is the official pregnancy announcement. Well done.
It is, yes.
Happy days.
So yeah, April, little nugget of joy should come along.
Oh, that's so cute. That's so cute. And
so yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's huge. That's so huge. My gosh. Wow. Okay, where do we go from here? Bathurst, right?
Oh, my second love.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, wait, no, second? Second?
Third. Oh, third.
Third?
Let's get my priorities right.
Don't you mean zeroth? Everything else comes after Bathurst?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Bathurst 1000. It's my favourite race of the year. I know it's yours as well, so it's coming around again. A bit later than usual as well.
Yes, there has been plenty going on in the Supercars series to cause that. And as a TLDR, if people aren't familiar with the Repco Supercars series now, because it's changed its naming rights once yet again, it's of course Australia, the Southern Hemisphere's premier touring car category, the national series for Australia, pretty much. It's where all the good Australian drivers end up if they don't go to Europe. And it's had a bit of a truncated season this year due to everyone's favourite virus of the time, COVID-19. So we started off the season pretty normally, pretty normally. It was the first time I hadn't started at Adelaide for 25 years, which was like a freaking knife to the chest for me, but, whatever. We actually started the season at Bathurst, and then from there went to Sandown, Tasmania, back to the Bend. Then we were meant to go to Winton, but COVID happened, and that kind of put a pin in that one. So the teams went up to the top end, did Darwin, a doubleheader at Townsville, and then COVID happened again.
COVID really happened.
Yeah, a big outbreak in particularly Sydney, and then that also transferred down to Melbourne as well. So for a large period of the year, from about end of June down to, last week, Sydney and Melbourne have been in lockdown, which has affected the teams because, either borders have been closed or teams that are based in those cities, particularly those in Melbourne, have been unable to go to work and work on their cars. And you can't really transit through New South Wales to get from Queensland to South Australia or from Melbourne up to Ipswich, etc., etc. So what happened is that we had a 3-month break, effectively, from July 18th through to the first round at Sydney, which was the beginning of the month, I think November 4th. Mm-hmm. So a huge break. But as a result of that, we've done very recently 4 straight rounds in Sydney at Sydney Motorsport Park, and we've got this weekend off, and next weekend will be the big one. As of the time of recording, we are already in Bathurst week because track action starts tomorrow, which is ridiculous.
Crazy to think that COVID has changed so much about this. Basically, while we've got a 6-day festival of motorsport now, we have the V8 or the Supercars event that's been rescheduled to December now.
Yeah.
And Australian Racing Group, who run TCR and GT. They were going to run events 1 or 2 weeks apart. There was a bit of an argument about having to give the other one clear air and, give them a couple of weeks break, which was not going to work. So they've just gone, bugger it, let's just have one big festival. Which is an amazing move, and I can't wait.
And we'll talk a little bit about the support categories, because it's basically it's the greatest hits of Australian support categories, effectively.
Basically, and everyone in motorsport is involved in this. It's even causing havoc with the commentary team and the organisers and all sorts.
I should see if they needed an extra commentator.
They're bringing back Greg Rust, so...
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, love Rusty, but he's been out of commentary for a while now, hasn't he?
Yeah, a few years. He's still been doing ARG stuff, but
This is true. This is true. So yeah, so this week we've got the Super Utes, which actually look good in their rebirth form now. Touring Car Masters, which is everyone's, all the Bogans' favourite support category. Australian GT, TCR, which has been an incredible revelation in Australia. Trans Am Series, S5000, and the Supercars. So that's.
Yep. Did you mention Carrera Cup as well? Doing a double round?
The Carrera Cup and the Toyota 86 series as well. And Super 2, that's what, 8 support categories on top of the main game.
We've never seen anything. Oh, I've never seen anything like it in Australia for such a long time. Especially at this level of motorsport.
This is true. The only thing I can think of is about 4 or 5 years ago when Adelaide had 7 support categories, like including the super trucks, including the old Utes, the Touring Car Masters, that was off the scale. But even then, like this is a level above.
Yeah, and this is. It does mean that every support category is pretty much going to race once a day, but every race is going to be worth watching. And I think the first race is even as early as Wednesday afternoon. Even before Supercars have their first practice session.
What a wild weekend it's going to be. We'll leave that aside for now. And if you are able to catch any of the support action, either through Superview or KO or whatever means you have available to you, I highly recommend you do, because support categories have almost been as exciting and impressive as the main game for the most part throughout this season. But we should talk about what this season has held in terms of the supercars, the big movers, the big shakers, and the surprise results, because it's been an odd season.
It has been incredibly odd, and seeing how teams, particularly in the last 4 rounds, we've had 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, or 9 races with the cancellation at Sydney, and you've certainly seen some teams who are really strong at Sydney really come to the fore. So drivers like Anton De Pasquale's had a mega run lately.
Yeah.
Whereas the Tickford cars, They went full
Tickford. They went full
Tickford, and they've been doing that all season. They've been talking about taking massive swings and absolutely just taking the sledgehammer to cars to try and fix what their problems are, and they've been incredibly inconsistent. Surprise packets, people like Tim Slade, Blanchard Racing Team, new kids on the block, a privateer team, part-time mechanics who just come along the weekend for fun, a true privateer entry. They're currently sitting 12th in the standings, and they've had a couple of fifths, a couple of 9 top 10 results throughout the season.
And they should have taken almost a podium in the first race, were it not for a gear shift issue at probably the worst part of the track at Bathurst.
Yeah, which completely wrote off the chassis. This was after he put a top 4 in qualifying.
Yeah, Tim Slade. That was a huge surprise packet at the beginning of the year. In the 250k races at Bathurst. It was oddly reminiscent of Mostert's incident in the 2015 qualifying session, except Tim didn't hit the inside wall first in that occasion. But yeah, shifted down, got a false neutral, buzzed the rears, and just slammed the car into the wall of the cutting. And it was, right off a chassis in their first event, and they were in 3rd place. It was quite sad, quite shocking, but it's good to see that they've, after a kind of a rough run after that, they've actually put things together properly in the mid part of the season. They're sitting, as you mentioned, in 12th in the championship. Yeah,
but for me, this season's seen about one driver and one team. Of course, Triple Eight Race Engineering, and of course, Shane Van Gisbergen.
He has had quite possibly the best year of his career, truth be told.
Yeah, there's been 2 results outside the top 10, and both of those, there was a 13th at Hidden Valley, which came because they couldn't get a wheel off the car easily, and a 23rd at the second round at Sydney because he threw it off the road, then got a pit lane penalty that got rescinded, then his pit crew gave him another one, and he came home 23rd. So, the only problems for Van Gisbergen have been in the pits. That's been the only reason he's dropped outside the 10 this year. Outside of that, he won the first 6 rounds of the season. On the back of
Bathurst last year, as well as 2 races in the Australian GT and the New Zealand Grand Prix as well. He went on a run, which was something like 12 races unbeaten to the start of the year, and then only got defeated by his teammate and finished second in that one.
Yeah. Do you think he's got a bit of pent-up rage that he can't go anywhere else to race this year?
I think he just loves racing. I think just everything he touches, he wants to win in. So
yeah, all up, that's 14 races he's won out of 28 we've had so far. I think it is.
Yes. So
29 if we exclude the cancelled one from last round.
So it has been all about Van Gisbergen this season. I just want to pick out 1 or 2 other big results. Just to add a bit of colour, I think the Sandown podium for Brodie Kostecki was a huge result in terms of sort of re-legitimising Erebus post Davy Reynolds. There was huge question marks over Erebus at the beginning of the season. You know, they had split with a driver that had signed a 10-year contract after a tumultuous season last year with the lockdown situation and engineers not being able to make events, and really some really bad press. To come in with 2 rookies in the form of Brodie Kostecki and Will Brown, pick up a podium in the second round of the series, and then have the two rookies, Will Brown and Brodie Kostecki, actually fighting each other in a really positive way and spurring each other's on, and it's resulted in some great form at the back end of the season.
And for Will Brown as well, he won. He's had his first win, and he's actually had 3 podiums at the rounds at Sydney.
So coming on strong at the right time of the season.
Absolutely. And another one I want to call out is Kelly Grove Racing. Andre Heimgartner had a win this season, sort of out of nowhere at the bend.
Yep.
And I think it bodes well for the future of that team, because we talked about this. We're going to talk about this a bit more later, but the Kellys, Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly, they've sold their team to Stephen Grove, and at the end of this year, they're gone. Stephen Grove has money.
Yes, he does, and
he has the money and the passion to turn this team into an absolute powerhouse if he wants to.
And that'll be the question, whether or not he wants to, and where we start from. Of course, Stephen Grove, regular listeners may know the Groves from either GT World Challenge Australia, where he and his son run the Grove Porsche. They also ran as a father-son duo at the Motorsport Games back in Vallelunga, I think.
Came third?
Yeah, where they go... And also, as an aside, Stephen Grove has tied the most class wins at the Bathurst 12 Hour.
There you go.
With his 4 consecutive wins in Carrera Cup, the B class.
Yep.
So,
and I think he is going to put a lot of effort into this, because he's already set up a junior academy from karting. He's got his eyes on a young Kiwi called Matt Payne, who's going to be phenomenal if he can work his head around the car. He has proven to be really quick, but he's still a bit inconsistent. He's also 16, I think.
Matt Payne's 16, really?
I think he is. I think he's that young.
My
double check that.
Because I know Matt Payne from the Earl Bamber Motorsport stable, because that's one of the drivers that EBM have been pushing really hard in Carrera Cup.
Yeah. So he's a driver for the future, and the Groves have got on him early, as he has done for quite a few Kiwis, actually. So yeah, he is, like Matt Payne, he's only been driving cars since 2020.
My gosh.
And he came first in the Toyota Racing Series earlier this year. So he is one for the future.
Absolutely. So we'll keep eyes on where he ends up. And that's a name that people listening needs to remember. Matt Payne. Payne. Remember. So,
absolutely.
Shall we talk about the teams and drivers that will be contesting the Bathurst 1000 this year?
We should absolutely talk about the 25 crazy people. Or 50
25 crazy cars, 50 crazy
Yeah.
people. So what we'll do is we'll go in reverse championship order. So we'll start from the bottom of the championship and work our way up to the big guns. If you're playing along at home, you can find the championship on the Supercars website at supercars.com. Or what we're doing as well is I've got the results of the season up on Wikipedia. So we'll be making reference to those.
You mean you haven't memorized everything ever?
No, I
about
haven't.
this?
I haven't memorized everything. See, the 3 month break really threw me through a loop. It got to the point as well where they'd say like car 96, black and white flag for track limits. I go, car 96, 96. Who's 96?
But it's only Macaulay Jones, so you wouldn't have paid attention to him anyway.
I mean, this is true, but, you know, normally I have all those numbers dialed in and memorized by the end of the first race of the season because I've been marshalling it and I've been talking about in numbers the whole day. But, like, you get what I mean? A 3-month break is a long time.
It is an absolutely long time. And these COVID restrictions that we talked about have actually played a lot of havoc with the driver lineup. Some teams have had to get last-minute co-drivers. We've had a wild card that was going to be here that we're not going to see anymore because New Zealand Kiwi drivers, basically because New Zealand drivers, Greg Murphy, Richard Stanaway can't get back home and not have to quarantine for 2 weeks, so they're out unfortunately. But we're still left with 25 incredible cars.
Let's actually, I want to get your opinion on the Murphy Stanaway car, seeing as we've mentioned it. I wasn't going to talk about this, but Richie Stanaway was the darling of the Supercars paddock in 2017 when he was the co-driver for Cameron Waters, and they won at Sandown. He put an incredible stint in the wet at Bathurst. Got a main game seat at Tickford, which went awfully. It was probably the worst season of a hyped driver that I've ever seen. Went to Gary Rogers and fell out of love with the sport and completely dropped by the wayside, became a streamer effectively, which, you know, nothing against streamers. It seems to have found some passion for it again. Placed, I think, 4th or 5th in the V8 Scops iRacing Bathurst 1000 alongside Shane van Gisbergen. And he hasn't lost any of his talent, surely. And then on the other side, you've got Greg Murphy, 2-time Bathurst 1000 winner, or sorry, 3-time Bathurst 1000 winner, and one of the Kiwis' favourite sons. So, are you very disappointed that they've not been able to come along?
I am. I'm also very disappointed because, I know we've given Boost Mobile and Peter Adderton a massive amount of grief in the past, but the fact he was willing to put his money behind this entry when no one else is really doing so at the moment, and willing to front up. And the fact this came around because of a social media post. Let's not forget that. This was created in response to a social media post about another wild card we'll get to. I'm so disappointed it's not here because I reckon they could have made waves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would have been an Erebus entry as well, and they've been proven to be quite handy this year.
Yeah, that was what I was going to follow up with. It would have been Erebus running the car, and they've hit their form at the right time. And I think that would have been a good fit for that sort of entry. A bit of something that will allow them to sort of do it their way and enjoy it, but fly under the radar a little bit. Because the other wild card we'll talk about is very sort of prominent. It has been a shame. Of course, Murphy's last outing at Bathurst ended in a big wreck under the tree. So for someone who has such a storied history at Bathurst with the Lap of the Gods as the center point alongside 3 wins, ending his career with a broken HRT under the tree, it's probably not how Greg Murphy wants to be remembered. No,
he's got unfinished business here, which is funny to say for him.
Exactly.
Because he's accomplished so much, but maybe next year. I've heard rumours or talk that they want to try for 22, so...
That would be good. I'd love to see that.
And hopefully April next year, the border reopens to New Zealand.
Yep.
Which is too late for me personally, because the FA is ready to go after Christmas. But they hopefully April next year we'll be back to normal and we might see them.
Fingers, arms, legs, toes, and eyes crossed. Okay, let's talk about the cars that are actually going to be here, and we'll start with Team Sydney. And I don't think anyone's been surprised by Team Sydney this year, which is, I mean, you know, it's gestures vaguely at everything.
Can you fire up the klaxon? Team Sydney.
Yeah, it's been bad. It's not been where they would have wanted to be. Of course, they had Alex Davison and Chris Pither last year. It was meant to be James Courtney, and then that whole thing with sponsorship and payment was a problem. They have had 2 cars this season. One of them is Fabian Coulthard, remember? Former DJR Team Penske driver who has finished in the top 3 or 4 of the championship the past few seasons. He currently sits in 24th place in the championship. And Gary Jacobson, who sits 2 positions further ahead in 22nd place. Let's talk at Fabs and his co-driver, Jono Webb, who is Mr. Techno. So they are plumb last on the standings. They've had 6 DNFs in that car, and it has not been a happy season for the former Penske driver.
Yeah, and not a happy season at all for the team owner that, not forget, one had Shane van Gisbergen not so long ago.
And has won Bathurst not so long
Yes.
ago. 2016 seems like a distant memory for Jono Webb in that team, because since losing Will Davison, since the loss of Steve Hallam and the brain drain in Techno Autosports, which has become Team Sydney, they've not been anywhere near those lofty heights.
Yeah, and it's been a tough year for the team. I know the last few years have been tough, but this year particularly for Team Sydney, they haven't really been based out of Sydney all that much. They've been operating out of Queensland for as much as I believe. That's where Techno Autosport are based.
Yep.
And the restrictions have hit them pretty hard as well. The Queensland board has been locked down a lot more than the New South Wales border for Victoria, for example.
Yep.
So they've had their own issues. The team seems to be underfunded. It seems to be like it's just there. Just backmarkers. Cars seem underdeveloped. Really, there's a reason these cars are day glow yellow. So you can see them as you're lapping them.
Oof. That is a solid oof. And what else is a solid oof, Chris? Fabian Coulthard has had a best result of 13th this season. They've not even managed to crack the 10 in the number 19 car.
That's, for someone like Fabian Coulthard as well, that's not great.
And you can see the frustration. He's been interviewed a few times in the quadrant of Sydney events, and he has not held back his emotion in those interviews. He to go from the lofty heights of DJR Team Penske to Team Sydney, and to be languishing at the back of the field, you can see how pained he is because of that.
Absolutely can, and it's just a massive hit to the pride. And I don't know honestly how much more he's got in him.
Well,
because I know at DJR you said he was never fantastic. So I feel like, and what is he now? 30 something? 30 mid-30s?
30 old.
Yeah, 30 old. So his best days are behind him. I think, unfortunately, I can't see anywhere else for him to go apart from the exit door.
Yeah, that's. I've got a star rating system that I've been putting together in my notes, and I've given this car in particular half a star.
That's generous.
I know. What about the other car, the Gary Jacobson car? They haven't had the best of years either. They've had a best finish of 12th, so they're one position up on their team car. But on the flip side, they've also only had 3 retirements through the year compared to Fabian's 6. Jacobson is driving with Dylan O'Keefe, who has been filling in a few seasons this series this year. He has filled in the Bostik Audi for Chaz Mostert when there's been a conflict between Supercars and GT World Challenge Australia. He's also driven the TCR. I believe he's with GRM in the Alfa Romeo, which is a pretty good ride. But
yeah,
he hasn't really broken through yet, has Dylan O'Keefe.
No, and the fact that he's not driving, I think, Super 2 this year is going to hurt him as well.
Yep.
Admittedly, that's only, 4 rounds to this point, but I just can't see much from this car. Although he is probably, for me, the most exciting driver of the 4 here.
I mean, when your competition is Fabian Coulthard, Jono Webb, and Gary Jacobson, that's not really much of a...
True. But Gary Jacobson, he seems like the driver... I'm going to draw a comparison to Tim Blanchard here. A bit of success in Super 2 just could not translate that to the main game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Gary Jacobson is a good co-driver, but not a good main game driver.
Yeah. But let's not forget, he won Super 2 in 2016, so... That was
such a long time ago, and if in that, though, there had been, big classes of drivers step up to the main game, and he wasn't really ever in one of them, even after he won the championship. So, he's actually a lot older than you think. He's 27 years old, which in, young racing, like rookie racing driver terms, is ancient.
Yeah. So, he'll hang around. He won't do anything stupid, but he won't set the time trends on fire.
I've given that team 1 star. Mostly off the back of O'Keefe.
So what we're saying is, if you're a betting man or woman, put your money elsewhere.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other opportunities. We'll move on to Matt Stone Racing next. They have had a good mix of decent results for their 2 drivers, Zane Goddard and Jake Kostecki. So this car was, of course, the super light entry last year. So they had half the rounds Goddard did, half the rounds Jake Kostecki did. Then with Jacobson, in fact, moving over to Team Sydney, they've been able to employ both drivers full time. Let's talk about the number 20 car. Well, they're actually almost exactly aligned in the championship as well. They're separated by something like 70 points between the 2 cars. So let's talk Zane Goddard first, and he's driving with Jaden Ojeda, which is a name that does roll off the tongue very, very well. Zane's picked up 2 top 10s this year, which is pretty nicely done. Those were at the Bend. Was that at the Bend? Or is that... No, at Simmons Plains, the first one. And then more recently at the first round... of the first race of the 3rd Sydney event.
I think for me, the impressive thing about Zane Goddard, he's finished every race.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
For a rookie in the season, or in the championship, that's actually really good. A rookie, he's had half a season and now this. That in itself is actually pretty impressive. And what they say about Motorsport, the best thing you can do is beat your teammate. He's currently doing that. And
we'll get into that because I think there's a few caveats in that. But it's a good start to the season for Zane. Well, start to the season. We're at the last round. But he has been consistent. Jaden Ojeda as well. After picking up a first win in Super 2, I think last season, he's moved on to pretty good things. And he's in third in the championship, rather, behind the 2 best drivers of the season so far, Brock Feeney and Zach Best.
Yeah, and it's his second year in Super 2. He's improving year on year. Last year was 4th overall. This year's, like I said, 3rd currently. It's actually going to be his second Bathurst start as well. He paired up with Tyler Everingham last year. Remember that wild card?
Did that come together?
Yeah, last year. Tyler Everingham and Jaden Ojeda came together. He came home 19th.
I legitimately do not remember that, like, at all.
Oh, you don't remember the fancy car scheme? But yeah, no. So I think Jaden Ojeda is one for the future.
Oh, absolutely.
He needs a bit more time. I think he's only 22, so I think he needs a little more time to mature properly. So I don't think we're going to get fantastic results from this pairing this year, but he's a name definitely to keep an eye out for when he is on track.
I've given the number 35 car 1.5 stars. So we're going up the grid slowly.
If you keep this transition up, by the time we get to the end, you'll be at 17 stars.
Well, I mean, we'll see. The other car in the MSR garage is the cousins Kostecki, Jake and Kurt. Jake's been quite good this season in patches. He took home a 5th place at Hidden Valley in the first race there. So that was the big marquee result for the team, was that 5th place. He's also had a disqualification at Townsville and a non-finish in the last round, the last race of the 2nd Sydney event. Kurt as well, he hasn't quite made the transition that Jake and Brody has. But he did run a few wildcards through the season and actually picked up a 6th place at Hidden Valley as well as a wildcard.
Yeah, those wildcards with the Walkinshaw and Andretti team.
Yep.
So I do think these are numbers 2 and 3 from the Kostecki clan.
Yep.
I think that's pretty plain to see. But again, I'm going to put them in the solid, if not spectacular, for now. I think. Honestly, I don't think these 2 are ever going to reach the heights that Brody does or is likely to reach.
Or
will, any of those words.
Yeah.
So I think, this is probably 15th or it'd probably be where I'd say these guys will finish up.
What do you reckon? This car or the Zane and Jaden car?
Toss up for me.
They're
both very even.
Aggressively even. I think the only plus or the only differentiating factor is that Kurt has experience in a supercar this year in the main game, whereas Ojeda doesn't. I think that's the only real difference you can pull between them. But even in saying that, I've given this car a 1 star. So
yeah, and of course, Jad and Jada will be driving Super 2 in the Nissan. So,
but Super 2 have only really had 2 rounds this season, or 3 rounds. True. Yeah, so it's hard to say.
It is. Well, a couple of unknown cars, I think, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Don't expect much from this team, though. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I, as unfortunate as this is to say, Matt Stone Racing are still finding their feet. And I actually just want to pose a quick question for you. Where to now for MSR? They've run the Superlight. They run 1 car. They've got 2 new drivers next year. You know, we didn't really want to talk about next year, but they will have Todd Hazelwood returning to this team. Where to now? Are they going to be a perennial backmarker, or are they going to start making strides through the field?
Well, I think what they need is experience to help guide the setup, and that's what they're going to get next year with Todd and Jack LeBrock. Okay, maybe not be that much experience, but they've had a few years in the system now. So being able to bring that knowledge back to the team will prove beneficial. So I do think slow progression up the grid next year should be expected. If they can find themselves in the top 10 of the team championship, I think they'd be happy enough with that.
Awesome. That's a good, reasonable take. I love it. Next,
unusual.
It's especially, yeah. Next cab off the rank is the Kelly Grove Racing Team. We've already made mention of the Kellys leaving at the end of the season, so it will become the Grove Racing Team next year. But for the moment, it is still Kelly Grove. They've had what you could best call a mixed season. So, do we want to start with... Where do we want to start with Kelly Grove?
Let's start with car 7, shall we? Because that's the one I'm much more excited about.
Absolutely. So this is going to be Andre Heimgartner and Matt Campbell. Now, Matt Campbell, of course, all of our Endurance Chat fans will be very familiar with this name. Has been a Porsche factory driver for the last few seasons. Won Petit Le Mans. Won the Sebring 12
spoilers.
Huh?
Spoilers, I haven't finished watching Petit Le Mans yet.
It's been 3 weeks! It's been 3... Okay.
I still got 5 hours to go.
Okay. That's fine. Okay, that's fine. I'll let... But it's also, won the Bathurst 12 hour, taken pole at the shootout at the Bathurst 12 hour, and was given his first co-driving opportunity by the Kellys with Todd Kelly back in 2016. So this is kind of a full circle for Matt Campbell in that team. Andre has had a race win this season, but really nothing else. It's been a really weird year for the team.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of it, because yes, they had that win, but it was under unique circumstances with a bit of weather in the air. And since then, I remember watching it going, oh, this car's actually get the right conditions and they're going to be good. But they've done nothing else since. And even the wet races at Sydney, they weren't terrible, but they weren't as far up the field as I thought they were going to be.
Well, I mean, you say they weren't terrible, but they were pretty close. A 7th place is their best result of the 4 Sydney rounds. So they're very solidly nowhere is what I'd put it, besides that one race win. Now, Matt Campbell is probably, I'll put him up there as one of the top 5 co-drivers in this field.
He's one of the top 10 GT drivers at the moment.
Absolutely. I'll pay that as well. Where do we see this combination in combination with the team? Because I think, of course, this is a very big transitional year for the team, going from the Kelly racing operation to Kelly Grove to Grove. Where do we see this team having the engineering nous, the pit stop prowess, the setup capabilities to be able to run with the front runners across 1,000 Ks?
No.
Do we see the drivers possible?
Oh, for sure. Andre Heimgartner is a great driver who's been doing exceptional things with equipment that's not quite there, and at times. And Matt Campbell, well, he's all right. So the drivers are great. I think that it's the team in the car that's going to let them down.
Where do we see them placing then?
Look, I'll be nice and give them a top 10.
I've actually given this car 3.5 stars. I reckon they're going to be one of the dark horses.
Okay.
Well, maybe that's on hope rather than actual sense.
I'd love to see it.
That's my heart saying that. My heart bleeds for Matt Campbell. I'm actually wearing my Porsche Motorsport shirt right now. My heart, Matt Campbell, you have my heart.
But yeah, I think next year will be the real litmus test for Andre.
Yeah, hopefully. And of course, he's going to Walkinshaw next year, partnering with Chaz Mostert. So happy. Oh no, sorry, no, he's not. He's going back to Brad Jones Racing, the team that gave him his second chance, effectively.
Yeah. So if he can do something at Brad Jones, I reckon he'll be absolutely that's his best chance because Kelly Grove, almost like they're having a fresh start. They're keeping one driver who we'll get to in a second, and like I said, with Matt Payne in the wings and their junior karting academy, the foundations for a really solid team going forward.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that second car, Davey Reynolds and Luke Youlden. Chris?
David Reynolds. Yep. Shall I?
Yep.
David Reynolds, you anti-vaccine piece of shit, piss off.
Pretty much.
That's all I want to say about this car.
So for those out of the loop, part of the condition of entry for Sydney Motorsport Park was that all the drivers, all the crews, all the fans, everyone at the track had to be double vaxxed. There was a process in which David Reynolds got a exemption to the vaccine, which was found to be not falsified, but knocked back or something along those lines. Basically, he got an exemption and he shouldn't have, and they investigated it and they kicked him out. And so he didn't race the last 2 rounds, or the middle 2 rounds of the Sydney quadrant because of that. And everyone has kind of come around to the fact that Reynolds is a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
And Youlden has been aggressively unimpressive. He got given the car for 2 rounds. Like, it's hard to really gauge Youlden's pace because, you know, you get thrown in the deep end for 2 weekends and then whipped out straight just as quickly. So hard to sort of gauge, but yeah.
Honestly, this car has not been impressive at all. David Reynolds' best results are 3rd place, and that was early on at, I think that was Sandown?
Sandown, yeah.
Yeah. Apart from that, he's at a 5th place at Townsville, but nothing else.
Yeah, and here's an interesting question to pose to you, Chris. Was winning the 2017 Bathurst 1000 the worst thing to happen in David Reynolds' career? For his career, was that the worst possible thing that could have happened for the rest of his career?
If the question you're asking is, did it inflate his ego to a point where it's actually affected his on-track performance? The answer is most certainly, unequivocally, yes.
I agree.
He is just, ever since that, he's just absolutely collapsed in a heap. And we've seen it before, like, you have these life-changing moments on track and suddenly or in anything, and you suddenly don't reach those highs again.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a Shakespearean tragedy with Reynolds because, you know, he was always, you know, the larrikin of the paddock, someone who was, you know, there or thereabouts occasionally in the championship fight, but, you know, was always there for a good laugh and you could get something funny out of him. But winning at Bathurst, as much as it was a surprise, well, not necessarily a surprise, but as much as it was a good result, it kind of elevated him to, you know, people all of a sudden talking about him as a championship contender, and it was massive media pressure and team pressure, and he signed a 10-year deal with Erebus, which lasted, let's remind everyone, 2 years, and it just the scrutiny that he was put under, it kind of opened everyone's eyes to the fact that Reynolds wasn't always the persona that we got to see of him, and I think my eyes were open up to him because he has his podcast, below the bonnet, right?
Yeah. My eyes were open up to the fact he was a bit of a dick when he had on that show, took Paul Murray, who is incredibly right-wing.
Wow.
And he was talking about how he was at the protests in Melbourne and observing, which I don't believe for a second.
Yep.
So, And as far as I'm concerned, he can piss off because we've got another larrikin in the grid who we'll talk about later, who's a breath of fresh air, and he's filled his larrikin shoes nicely.
Yeah, and we'll get to that when we do get to that. So, Davey and Yulden, 0 stars, don't really care. Andre and Campbell, I gave 3.5 stars. So, we'll hopefully see that car move their way up to the grid.
Yep. It's a shame. It's a waste of talent. That's all I'm going to say.
It is indeed. The next car is the first of our, well, I think the only single car team of the season. Tim and Tim, the Cool Drive Blanchard racing team, Tim Slade and Tim Blanchard. We've made mention already about how that team started in the first race of the season at Bathurst. Unfortunately, the podium hasn't eventuated for Tim Slade throughout the season, but he did take a 4th at the first race of the second round at Townsville. What do we make of Blanchard Racing and the Tim and Tim combination?
As James Courtney called it on broadcast last weekend, Team Tim. Honestly, this has been the surprise packet of the season for me, as we talked about earlier. And Tim Slade, okay, his last few results haven't been fantastic, but he's been there and thereabouts the top 10. Like I said, he's currently 12th in the championship after missing 2 races, after not scoring in the Bathurst round at all because the car didn't make race 2. So I like what he can do as a driver. I'm less sure about Tim Blanchard. He's one of those co-drivers, when we alluded to him before, he never really made the step from Super 2 to the main game. And he'll be solid, but I don't think he'll be overly spectacular.
You pretty much... have you got a copy of my notes? That's pretty much exactly what I wrote down.
Is that you at your window? Why are you wearing any pants?
Hey, it's the weekend, man. It's sunny. It's the weekend. Get off my back.
Get off my lawn.
So, one of the things that's been a bit concerning for me, from a racing standpoint, is that they haven't, after that first weekend, they haven't really had the same sort of flair since. It's been very sort of journeyman-like, workman-like. You know, they've gotten decent results. You know, Tim has a 4th place and a 5th place, a pair of 5th place, but it hasn't really been that same wow factor that we saw at the first round of the series.
I think a lot of that does come into the team dynamic, though. Because it's a part-time team. They're doing this as a hobby. They don't have, like, even in their pit stops, we've seen they're regularly 2 or 3 seconds slower than the competition. And that's because they don't put in the time to train, because they don't have the time to train.
That's exactly right. And they are also part of the Tickford racing stable. So they're supported in very, very, very big inverted commas by Tickford. So they share equipment with Tickford and et cetera, et cetera. They share a pit boom with Tickford as well. And the incredible thing about that, just as an aside, is that Blanchard Racing Team is ahead of 2 of the Tickford racing cars, which is pretty great.
And shows how bad Tickford have been. But I'm just back on Tim Blanchard. I do want to mention he has raced in Super 2 this year as a wild card in the 88. 2 podiums at Townsville.
I wanted to get to that as well because, you know, we did love to rag on Blanchard in the past when we were doing Supercars Chat and our various Bathurst 1000 previews. But when he came and did the wild card last year at Barbagallo and was very comfortably mid-pack and pushing the guys at the end of the top 10, that was a huge surprise. And it shows that Blanchard actually has some pace. Maybe he just didn't have the engineering behind him when he was in the 4th car at Brad Jones.
Which is quite possible. His engineering team, hasn't he? I'm pretty sure he's got a decent name in there too this year.
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm just having a quick Google. But yeah, I think because this is, Cool Drive is the Blanchard family business. I think he got caught up in running that and potentially didn't, focus too much on his racing career.
Quite possibly, but it's good to see. Well, hopefully they've got a good result in them this time. I've given them 2 stars. You
know what I just thought of?
What?
Parallels with Paul Dumbrell.
Yes, actually, yes. Very good point.
Paul Dumbrell, when he was running Autobahn and he was driving by himself, he wasn't fantastic. Get him as a co-driver, he just turned it on.
To be fair, though, he was as a co-driver in Triple Eight Race Engineering with the likes of Jeremy Law and Mark Dutton and David Couchy riding that car alongside quite literally the GOAT. So,
true.
Potato tomato in that respect. But Not too bad. I did give that car only 2 stars because I don't quite think that they have the outright pace to match the other bigger teams that we're going to get to, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them nab a top 10, and in fact, I'd be very happy with that.
Yeah, so would I. And it'd cap off what's been a pretty good debut season for him.
Absolutely. We'll move on to one of the more established teams now, Team 18, the Charlie Schwerkolt racing team, which have been fielding the 2 cars for Mark Winterbottom and Scott Pye throughout the season. They comfortably sandwich the back end of the top 10, with Frosty in 9th and Scott Pye in 11th. Let's talk about Pye first, because I think he's got probably the more exciting co-driver. So Scott Pye, he was strong at Sydney Motorsport Park, taking home, I think that's 5 top 10 results across the, 10 races, 11 races in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty decent return. He's had a best result this season of 5th, at Sydney Motorsport Park in the second race, which was, I think, the one that started getting a bit rainy in the middle. But he's been paired up with maybe a forgotten face in the Supercars paddock, James Golding. Beaver's back, baby!
Hasn't he had a massive haircut too, so he no longer looks like a beaver?
Oh, that was part of the best meme, though.
But yeah, he's been spending his time in TCR this year.
And Super
5000.
Yeah. Because if I recall correctly, Golding, of course, he raced with Gary Rogers when he was in the main game. And he's a contracted factory Gary Rogers driver, which means that, where Gary races TCR and also services the whole grid of Super 5000s. Of course, he's been making waves there. Yeah.
And he's been making great waves. Has he been in TCR? No, I don't think he has this year.
Okay.
It was last year, I think it was in TCR.
TCR has somehow probably had a more truncated season than the Supercars, though, so...
Yeah. So, I really am excited about what he brings to the table. I'm so... I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but the fact that he hasn't got himself a full-time gig, I think it's a bit of a shame, because he's actually great fun to have in the paddock as well.
Yeah.
But I think the more important thing to you is he's got a great co-driver, and this is just a great combination.
This is true.
They'll work well together. Scotty Pye, he won't put a foot wrong. Bieber won't put a foot wrong. Team 18 have done very well this season, and the team dynamic they've got is incredible.
It looks like everyone is working towards the same goal at Team 18.
Yeah, I think Charlie Schwerkolt was saying, when the pandemic shut, he just had, instead of standing his team down, he put them to work in the forklift shop.
Yeah, right.
So, they're working on forklifts in the downtime, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Pye, of course, has a podium at Bathurst, driving with Walkinshaw in the 50th anniversary of Brock's first win car.
Mm-hmm.
Was that 2 or 3 years ago?
2018? He's actually had 2 consecutive podiums as well.
There you go. So Pye certainly has the chops at Bathurst. And someone else who has the chops at Bathurst is, of course, Mike Winterbottom, winning in 15, with what was back then Pro Drive Racing. He's driving with Caruso. What's his first name? Michael Caruso. There you go. For some reason, I was thinking Mark. I'm like, no, that's Winterbottom. Michael Caruso. I'd love to see, as much as I love Caruso, I don't think he has the same wow factor as some of the other co-drivers. Not necessarily that you need the wow factor, because on the other hand, you have years and years and years and years and years of experience. But it is missing that sort of wow factor. I want to care more about this car, because it's, at the start of the season, it took home 3 consecutive top 5 results, and has been, there or thereabouts for most of the season. It's in the top 10, but there's no wow.
Yeah. And of course, well, there is a little wow. Like Mark Winterbottom finished at the races at the first start of the season, Mount Panorama 500, 4th and 5th.
Which is pretty good.
But I do get what you mean, because if you look at Cruz's results in TCR, where he's been playing his trade this year, he's sort of languishing down in 13th in the championship at the moment.
Yeah,
admittedly, he could be as high as 8th if it wasn't for disqualification. But
yeah. Well, yeah, but still, that's not very wow, is it?
No, it's not.
It's something about, I think Frosty's just been missing some sort of cutting edge this season. That's sort of what it's been like to me. And it seems that it's very rare that Team 18 have gotten both the cars in the right window at the same time. It just seems to me that, yeah, if I have another proper look through the results of the season, they've not really had both cars at the pointy end at the same time all that consistently.
Yeah, and that's not the first team we've mentioned that problem with. Like Walkinshaw last year had the same problem.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. So how have you rated these teams? I do think the 20 is the better combo.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you for that. Yeah, I agree. I gave Team 18, the number 18, I gave them 2.5 stars. I think they'll be solid, but I don't expect them to be wow. And I gave number 20 3 stars, mostly because I have that wow over Golding. So
fair enough. But I reckon, look, if we can get one of these cars in the top 5, that'd be a fantastic result.
I agree. That would be right up there with the very best. Erebus has been showing that they deserve to be up there with the very best. And they have the 2 cars, number 9 and number 99, of Will Brown and Brody Kostecki, respectively. They also sit at the tail end of the top 10. But the difference, I think, between Erebus and Team 18 is that when Erebus have had a chance to do something amazing, they've gone and done something amazing. And nothing can be more a testament to that than the recent race win at the last race in the 3rd Sydney event for Will Brown. He took his debut race win. Admittedly, there were some mitigating factors with the Red Bulls intentionally tripping over each other, which was a bit of a laugh. But that was a result that has been coming, and it finally came for them. And hell yeah, it did.
Yeah. You say there were mitigating factors. Let's not forget the first race of that weekend. He came in 3rd behind De Pasquale and Van Gisbergen and ahead of Whincup. So that first place, yes, okay, the Red Boys might have tripped over each other, but it was still incredibly well deserved. And he's had 3 podiums at Sydney this year now. And he's just a lovable character. Did you watch practice 1 from the last round by any chance?
No, I didn't, and I couldn't because I was working and then was out basically all that night, so I couldn't catch up on it afterwards. Okay. But he's basically, I heard many good things about it. I saw his attempt at the tech talk.
Yes,
that was hilarious. And if you haven't seen that, I'm pretty sure the Supercars have posted that on YouTube.
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
Yeah, all because the regular pit reporters were all in cars at the time. So it was a great thing for him. And honestly, I think he's been learning off his co-driver as well.
Yeah, so his co-driver is Jack Perkins. And I'd actually rate Perkins as one of the best co-drivers in the field. And again, it's someone that didn't really break through when it came to the main game. Only got his first Supercars win as a co-driver for James Courtney at Gold Coast, if I recall correctly. But what Perkins brings to the team is engineering experience. Not that, they need engineering experience, but, someone who knows how to set up a car really well and knows how to communicate with the engineers and the mechanics, and experience and driving experience.
Yeah, and let's not forget, he's been around cars all his life, because you can guarantee Larry would have dragged him around everywhere.
And his grandfather as well. I forget what his name was, but, grandfather Perkins was a race driver as well.
Yeah, and really, Jack Perkins' career only stopped because of health issues. That's the only reason it sort of fell away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he had 6 years off in the middle. It was just a couple of years off in the middle, dealing with various issues. And if it wasn't for that, I reckon he'd still be at him. And now he's commentating on Channel 7. He's doing his commentary thing. He's been in the pit lane for Supercars.
And he's very well spoken. And he's got, of course, the Perkins Engineering YouTube channel as well, where he'll break down certain things. So when there was that the fire in his car at Townsville, he actually went back, and I talked about that fire in Townsville maybe somewhere, maybe in a marshalling podcast that I did, but basically the reason that fire was able to get as much of the car as it did was because there was a lack of access to that post with fire extinguishers available. And so he actually went back to his garage and broke down the fire extinguishing capabilities of a race car and what you have on hand versus what you would have nearby in terms of the marshalling. So he's a very incredibly well-spoken character, and I think is a great partner to the lovable Will Brown.
Yeah, and I think this is a great contrast in what you want from a team. You've got Will Brown who's not afraid to put the car where he needs to try to get a pass done and just be aggressive and do that. And Jack Perkins, who you know is going to bring the car home in one piece at a fast clip. So I reckon this car could easily finish top 5.
I've put them at a 3.5 star, and to be fair, I've only given one car 4 stars and one car 5 stars. So 3.5 star is effectively best of the rest in my noting. And
that's what the championship sort of says about Will Brown as well.
Exactly right. He is comfortably in that battle pack at the tail end of the top 10. And I think with Perkins, that is a solid car. I see them in a top 5 position, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about the other car? What about the other Erebus car? Brody Kostecki has shown glimpses as well. He took home a second place, a very, very well-worked second place at Sandown at the very beginning of the season. Took a third at the beginning of the Sydney Swing, and then fourth at the second race of that. But then hasn't really quite captured the same form. Had an accident with James Courtney in the night race at Sydney 2. It has been there or thereabouts. He's behind Will Brown in the championship, and he's driving with David Russell as well, which kind of matches the pairing with Will Brown and Perkins, a very experienced head who has a great mechanical mind and will be consistent.
Yeah, and this car was meant to have Ash Walsh in it, I do believe.
Okay. Similar sort of deal.
Yep, but he got stuck in Queensland because of the borders. So
wow.
David Russell's been drafted in. Look, he's not going to do anything wrong. He's been doing this for longer than I've been alive.
Really? No.
Well, maybe not, but a long time anyway.
It feels that way. Remember when he was driving with Cameron Waters and Chaz Mostert did a dive bomb on him at the chase and broke the steering and ruined that car's race?
Yes.
Poor dude. But yeah, like Russell is solid, if not boring. Like he's metronomic.
Which sometimes you want as a co-driver, because Brody Kostecki, he's learning his craft. He's going to make a mistake because this is his first full-time season.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. In fact, remember last year he was co-driving with Anton De Pasquale and had that great battle with a few of the main game drivers. And so, his heroics at Bathurst is still going to be fresh in everyone's mind. He's going to be very difficult to pass.
Yeah, no doubt. And I still think he's probably 1 or 2 years away from really setting Bathurst alight or setting Supercars alight. But the fact we're saying that he's going to is enough in my mind to say this car's going to have a reasonable result, but it's certainly not as good as the number 9.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I gave Brody and Russell 3 stars, and I think they'll be firmly in the top 10 for most of the race.
I can't disagree.
Let's talk about the two halves of the Brad Jones Racing stable. So we'll start with the less impressive side first. We've got the number 4 Jack Smith and David Wall car, and then the number 96 Macca Jones and Chris Pither car.
Meh.
That's again. Are you reading my notes, bro?
Did you just write meh ... For
Macca and Pither, yeah, I did. I wrote meh because somehow they're behind Jack Smith in the championship.
Yeah, and that's come down to 7 retirements for Macca,
which is too many.
Yeah. He'll be racing around next year because Daddy's money. He can burn it. Nepotism and Chris Pither ain't all that.
Yeah. So, meh, I gave them 1 star. I also gave Smith and Wall 1 star, and my only note for them is they're somehow ahead of Macaulay Jones.
Yep. Having said that, I think Jack Smith gave his first interview I've ever seen on TV. Actually quite well spoken.
You know what? I don't believe you. I'm sure he is. I'm sure it's like he's fine and he's a good dude and whatever, but like his best result is 16th this season. And, when he made the graduation from Super 2, his best result in Super 2 was 7th. And, that's not good enough.
It's not. These guys are both burning parents' money.
Yeah. I gave them both 1 star.
Yeah, Can we move on, please, to the exciting cars?
Absolutely. The exciting cars of Brad Jones Racing. The number 14 car, Todd Hazelwood and Dean Fiore. It's been a hot and cold season for Todd Hazelwood. He's had some really impressive moments, but they just haven't been converted to impressive results. His best result was a 4th at Townsville too. In fact, he got 3 top 10s at the second round at Townsville. But it just, that's been contrasted with, a 23rd and a 26th at Sydney, the Sydney second round, and the first half of the season he got 1 top 10 before that good run at Townsville. So it's hot and cold is really the only way you can describe Todd Hazelwood's season.
I wouldn't even go that far. I'd say it's been, apart from that stretch of Townsville, it's been basically cold.
Yeah.
He has sort of struggled a bit, and I just don't know what to make of it. We know he's a great driver. He's got a lot of promise, but he just hasn't been able to turn it on yet. And I think that's part of the reason why he's shifting teams next year.
I definitely agree on that note. I think in contrast with, say, Erebus, when Erebus have had opportunities, they've taken it and they've seized it and they've gotten something out of it. When Hazelwood in particular has gotten opportunities, it's gone a bit awry. Either there's been a problem in the pits, which is very unlike Brad Jones Racing, let's say, or there's just been a lack of pace, or they've had a mistake in qualifying, or something's gone awry, which has seen that car head into the last round of the championship in 14th place.
Yeah, and his co-driver for this, Dean Fiore, he's another name that's been around for donkey's years and hasn't really achieved anything spectacular. I think he's had a best result at Bathurst of 6 last year.
Yeah.
With Scotty Pye. But really, it's been a lot of nothing burger since before then.
Yeah, I've got written down, Fiore is fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
He'll bring the car back. That's fine. One thing I do want to say, though, about Brad Jones Racing is that their pit stops have been consistently the best pit stops of the entire grid. If there's one thing Brad Jones does well, it's pit stops.
And it's been that way for a number of years. They have the pit stop challenge every year at Bathurst that they always seem to clean up on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I liken it to the New Zealand cricket team. They might not be the most technically proficient or the most, the most flamboyant, but they just get the basics right.
See, you say that, but currently the New Zealand cricket team is the only team that's made it to the finals in all 3 formats.
Yeah, because they got the basics right.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they're more better than you say than you're being. You need to be kinder than the New Zealand cricket team. Maybe it was maybe you could say that about the New Zealand team 10 years ago.
Maybe I'm just used to the 10 years of Daniel Vettori being
the New Zealand cricket team.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
The other team, the other driver pairing at Brad Jones Racing, this is probably the most impressive one, is Nick Percat and Dale Wood. Now, Percat has probably been the most unlucky driver this season in terms of race results. He's deserved a victory this season. Yes. In fact, I was about to say he's the only racer in the top 7 or the top 8 who doesn't have a race victory, but there's another driver that we'll talk about later on. But he's deserved a victory this season, and the fact that he took pole position in the shootout for the washed out last race at Sydney kind of exemplifies his season in a nutshell.
Yeah, he's actually put together a really good season, and the sort of season we know he's had in him. And okay, he hasn't had that race win, but I reckon he is primed for a good result at Bathurst. And if it wasn't for his co-driver, I'd happily put this car on the podium. Yeah,
now Dale Wood is perfectly solid. Remember, he was the co-driver for Scott McLaughlin when McLaughlin was at Volvo, and that one year that Alex Premer was with Shane Van Gisbergen for some reason.
Yep.
But I don't, again, similar to Caruso, he's just kind of boring Like, he's solid. That's fine. He'll bring the car home. It'll be down to Percat to do a lot of the legwork, but that's fine.
It's fine. Percat's good enough to do the legwork. And let's not forget, he's won here.
This is true. He's won here. He took a race win on debut here.
Let's not forget that point. So, and it's going to be his last race with the team as well before he makes a big move next year. So, he'll want to finish on a high, and I reckon maybe top 5 might be achievable for this team.
I've given this car 3.5 stars. This is my dark horse, provided that, Brad Jones things don't happen to Brad Jones.
Yeah, Brad Jones and Bathurst go together like chalk and salmon.
I don't like that.
Like, Brad Jones, he just never had the luck here, ever. Racing career, team owner career, you name it.
Yeah, it's just not gone well. So hopefully Brad Jones things don't happen to Brad Jones at Bathurst. And Nick Percat can bring home a good result. He is really, apart from, the top group of 6, which, are all the normal names you'd expect, he has been the best of the rest this season. He sits not comfortably in 7th place, but he leads that battle pack at the tail end of the top 10. So he has deserved a victory this season, and it would be wild if he got it at Bathurst.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It'd be in his last race with the team before he moves back to where he got his start.
Yeah. Wow, a lot of people coming through full circle here.
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention this at the start. Of the 50 drivers here, or 25 teams, 23 are new combinations, and I think something like 12 are on the move next year.
Hot damn. That's a lot.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, okay.
And big teams too, which we'll get to soon.
Well, we'll get to one of them straight away. Tickford Racing. They have had a weird season. They've been, some great highs and some absolutely awful lows. And coming into Bathurst, it has been a little concerning. We'll talk a bit more about the specifics, but let's go through the combinations first. The number 5 has Jack LeBrock and Zach Best. So LeBrock is currently 16th in the championship and on the move next year. Best has been best of the rest in Super 2 behind the incredible Brock Feeney. Thoughts, comments, hopes, dreams?
Jack LeBrock has been thoroughly unimpressive.
And remember when he was at Techno and got like a podium at Simmons Plains and it was wild? Yeah.
He's just done nothing like that. Like what is he this year? His best result this year is a couple of 6th places in a Tickford car. He's the lowest place of all the Tickford cars by some margin.
And if it wasn't for David Reynolds missing 6 consecutive races, he would be the lowest placed Mustang.
That's so bad.
Yeah, indeed.
For someone who really was touted as the next big thing for the Blue Oval. That's shocking. And I'll tell you what, though. I'm really excited to see how Zach Best goes.
I think Best will be a reason to look at that car, because really there isn't any other.
Exactly.
So I gave that car 2 stars. The number 44 is the next cab off the rank, James Courtney and Thomas Randall. Now, Courtney has had a weird season as well. More hot and cold probably than Todd Hazelwood. He got a podium at Sydney Motorsport Park in the wet race, but he's 13th in the standings.
Yep. Oh, and he got nerfed off in the second wet race.
This is true, but he was in the mid-pack. He was in the mid-pack to start with, so, you qualify down there, that's what you get. He's had a pretty uninspiring year apart from that. He's had 1 and 4th position otherwise, and that was at the Bend. But, on the other hand, he is driving with Thomas Randall, and Thomas Randall is... His recovery from having literally cancer has been amazing to watch, and he'll be in a main game drive next year. Finally, we've only been asking for it for 3 seasons on the trot.
Yes, I mean, it's about time he got a decent run at it. He's been driving the S5000s, and he's on track to, well, no, not win that championship, but he's on track to have a good result as well. And is he doing double duty?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
What else would he be doubling the duty with? Super 2?
No, with this.
Oh, I expect so.
Okay. So yeah, he's He's a big boy. I don't even know how he fits into those Super 5000 cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's done a few wildcards this season as well, has Thomas Randall. He's finished, in the top 10 twice. So,
look, I'm interested to see how he goes, and pairing with James Courtney, the man who's going to just teach him everything he needs to know about this place, really. It's youth and experience, and I think James Courtney, I'm starting to feel like he's outstaying his welcome in supercars.
It's hard to say that when he picks up a podium out of nowhere at Sydney.
I know, but I just feel like he's been around for a long time.
He's the oldest driver in the field now.
Yeah.
Regular driver.
Yeah. His time's almost up. So good on Tickford for getting as much out of it as he can. I don't think he'll get another drive after his contract expires. But I don't think this car is going to light the world on fire. Randall, maybe outside the top 5 just. It all comes down to what Randall can do, I think.
I've actually rated this the highest of any Tickford entry, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Okay. I gave this car 3 stars.
Okay, that's fair.
So the third car and the, pace setter in the Tickford garage has been Cameron Waters and James Moffat. Moffat is, again, kind of boring. Well, actually, no, that's not necessarily true. He's spiky as a co-driver.
Yes.
So he certainly will leave it all out there in every single way possible. But the concern for me with this team is, at Sydney, they went full Tickford. All 3 cars were nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And Cameron Waters especially. Now, Cameron Waters went into the Sydney quadrant of races, challenging for second place in the championship. He is now struggling to hang on to 5th in the championship. The only redeeming feature for him in those string of races was a podium that he only just managed to hold on to in the last race under lights.
Yeah. Mind you, that race was down to poor tyre strategy on Tickford's part 2.
Yeah, exactly. So is there a redemption for going full Tickford?
No. I'm sorry, but once you go full Tickford, you never go back. And it's just been symptomatic of this season. Okay, Cameron Waters had some great results early on as well, but
he was the fastest car at Bathurst. Yeah. In the first 2 races of the season, he should have won both of them. It was a power steering problem and then an awful pit stop that's put him behind at the very beginning of the season. But you almost expect that, is the thing. Is the terrible, awful thing is you almost expect that from Tickford now.
Yeah, you do. And they're going back to 4 cars next year when the 4th car Tickford syndrome's a massive problem for them. So this team, I just don't know this team, man. I've got no words.
Once you go full Tickford, it is hard to come back from that. And there's been good results as well. He took Waters took a very hard fought win at the Bend, fighting off Shane Van Gisbergen. He won 2 races in Townsville, the first weekend in Townsville, where Tickford cars were the class of the field and Triple Eight were, in comparison, nowhere compared to where they normally want to be. But Sydney, man, Sydney has been awful for them. 13th, 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 22nd, 15th, and low top 10s. It's just...
The only redeeming thing for them is they've actually had a chance to come back down the Hume Highway, come home for a week, take a breather, and get sorted. And I think that'll actually do them good because, let's not forget, they were in Sydney for that 4-week period. They didn't come back to Melbourne at all. So, and their factory is along the Hume Highway, so it's not like it's hard to get to from Sydney. It's just down the road. So
that road is almost 1,000 kilometres, but it is just down the road.
Yeah. So I think that will be good for them. But I don't think it's going to translate for a result, especially not with this car.
I gave that car 2.5 stars. Yeah. And
James Moffat's nothing.
Yeah.
He's just an angry little punchy person.
Wow, okay. Pulling no punches here is Kiwi Chris. Damn. Okay, maybe we're being a little harsh, but it is hard not to be considering their recent form. That's the thing. It's their recent form that has been alarming.
Yep. And I think he's been racing... Yeah, James Moffat's been racing in TCR as well and is down in 12th.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, now we're getting to the last page of my notes. So we're getting into the big boys. And we'll start with Walkinshaw Andretti United, the tale of two cars. And we'll start with the number 2 to start with. Bryce Fullwood, languishing in 17th in the championship is a bit unfortunate. Started the season very strongly with a 5th in the first race. And has kind of gone nowhere since then. He's certainly been the anchor in the Walkinshaw Andretti United stable. In fact, he is getting moved on next year. He'll be at remind me, Chris, where he'll be next year.
Next year, Mr.
Is it MSR Fullwood? Or
yeah, he's going back. I'm pretty sure he's going back to MSR. So
well, there you go. On the other hand, his co-driver is Warren Luff, and Warren Luff is a serial podium getter at Bathurst. I think he has 6 podiums out of the last 7 races at Bathurst in the 1000.
Just to clear up, sorry, Fullwood's going to BJR.
BJR, there you go.
Yeah. But Warren Luff, he's been around the traps. The stunt driver knows how to drive and get podiums and win this place. He's a perfect co-driver for Bryce Fullwood, I think. But I don't think it's going to actually help Bryce Fullwood achieve anything in this race because, let's be real, his first 2 years have not been that good. For someone who promised so much and delivered so little, it's a real shame.
More and more, I am disappointed that Todd Hazelwood didn't end up at Walkinshaw Andretti United. I think that would have been the move. And had Todd ended up there instead of Brad Jones, I think he would be a championship contender. That makes me sad.
Yeah, absolutely does. But yeah, Warren Luff won 3rd last year, a couple of seconds before that, 3 more podiums as well.
So
he's been the co-driver of probably one of the best co-drivers of the last decade.
He is a serial podium getter. In the last since 2012, he has only finished a race off the podium once. The 2 years that he didn't finish were 2014, wherein that car didn't start the race after an accident in practice, where Luff was driving and it got tipped onto his roof at the Griffiths Bend. And a DNF in 2016, driving with Garth Tander, which was the year that they were in the mix for a podium, but Jamie Whincup made a poor decision in redressing a position. So if you remove those 2 years out of it, he's finished off the podium once in a decade.
And that's with 4 different co-drivers: Craig Lowndes, Garth Tander, Scott Pye, and Chaz Mostert.
So he is a serial podium getter, and I even with Bryce Fullwood, I think that will be enough to lift this car up. I've actually given this car 3 stars entirely off of Warren Luff.
And he's one of the most experienced drivers around. He's been driving at Bathurst since 1997 in a Honda Accord.
Ah, yes, the split years.
Yes. Oh God, there's a whole podcast in that alone.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Warren Luff is good enough to get it done. It's just what can Bryce Fullwood do, and what can the car do? Because I don't think it's all down to Bryce Fullwood. I do think this is the car as well. Like, it seems like they've taken we can't get both cars together at the same time to, we've only got the one car we're getting right all the time, and one car we're just ignoring.
I think that is maybe Bryce Fullwood's results are a symptom of the focus on Chaz Mostert. And you could argue rightfully so, because Chaz Mostert has been in the fight. Well, not in the fight for the championship, because the championship was over, in inverted commas, very quickly. But has certainly been in the mix for a good result in the championship. So Chaz is driving with Lee Holdsworth. He's had a bunch of near misses, particularly towards the end of the season. He took 2 wins, one at Simmons Plains and one at Hidden Valley. But in the mix has picked up 7 podiums and has been consistently in that top half of the top 10 fight without really pushing on to make a huge fight of it. But he's been consistent. He's been consistent for the most part. In fact, he's only had, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, for 5 races outside of the top 10 this season.
Yeah.
It's just missing that cutting edge at Walkinshaw. And is that going to be a problem come Bathurst?
I don't think so. Chaz Mostert, he knows how to get it done. He hasn't really put that many feet wrong this season. From memory, the bad results he's had have a lot been down to poor luck or poor team.
Yep.
Play more than him.
There was that crash at the bend though, which was himself, Cameron Waters, and Tim Slade all tripping over each other.
Yeah, that was more of a mess though. That was like you can't
First
blame
lap mess,
yeah, can't blame anyone for that really. So, and let's not forget, Chaz Mostert is going to walk away from Bathurst with a title no matter what happens.
Is he?
Yeah, because all he needs to do is finish 7th in race 1 of the TCR, and he's won that title.
Oh, well, there you go.
And he's actually going to enter one race of TCR just to make sure he does that.
Yeah, fair enough. So pulling double duty.
Yep, for one race. So yeah, he's going to come home with some silverware. He would love it to be the Peter Brock Trophy. And honestly, Lee Holdsworth is a really good pickup for the team.
I've got a question mark about that. So Holdsworth, he's one of the drivers that never really broke through properly in supercars. He, with Stone Brothers, he finished 4th in the championship. With when he went to when that became Erebus, he did pick up a race win, and then went to Tickford with the Mustang and was making the most of the Mustang, but only very just, like at the tail end of the top 10 when everyone else in the Mustang was at the very pointy end. It's kind of a similar sort of thing to Michael Caruso, which is not surprising at all considering their careers followed very similar paths. He's not really an exciting driver. I think I would have preferred to have Luff in that car with Mostert.
Oh, that would have been phenomenal.
Because that was the combination last year, and they finished 3rd.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit strange to have changed it, but to be fair, Lee Holdsworth is actually having an all right year. He's been racing in TCR as well this year in the Alpha. So, and he's currently 3rd in that championship. So I think he'll be okay.
Okay, I think he'll be okay as well. I gave that car 3 stars as well. So
look, I've got him in the 5.
In the top 5?
Comfortably so.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Now we get into the big guns. DJR, divorced now from Team Penske. It is just Dick Johnson and the resources he can bring to the team. The 2 cars, Anton De Pasquale and Will Davison. Let's go with Anton first. Anton has had a mixed bag of a season, particularly at the start of the season. It was not going all to plan, but he did pick up a win at the Bend and 5 wins in Sydney. He was clearly the fastest car at Sydney Motorsport Park. The problem was when they weren't on, they really weren't on. And in part of that as well was a disqualification for using tyres outside of their allocation as well. Sitting 6th in the championship, driving with Tony D'Alberto. What do we think, Chris?
He's had a really mixed season, and honestly, if you took out those retirements from the early part of the season, he should be much further up the grid. Let's give him, say, 600 points for those retirements. Oh, no, let's give him 400 points from those retirements. That puts him comfortably in the fight for 2nd place.
And I think that would be a more true representation of his relative pace compared to those around him.
Yeah. So he is proving to be actually really good and definitely the future for DJR.
Certainly. And he's been a qualifying machine as well. He's taken home a string of pole positions and shootout laps as well. So do we see that car at the top of the grid on Sunday?
I just have a massive question mark about what Tony D'Alberto is going to bring to it. Yes, he's been with Tickford for a while. Or not Tickford, sorry, DJR for a while. He brought the car home in 3rd in 2017 and 4th last year with Fabian Coulthard. I think he's one of those ones, he's not spectacular, but he will at least give you a solid platform to build on, and ADP is good enough to build on that platform.
He's certainly not Scott McLaughlin, and that was who was meant to be driving this car.
No, that's very true. That was my next point. But Scotty Macinus is a whole different beast.
Absolutely, and because of that, I've only put this as a 3.5-star car. And the entire reason for that is because Tony D'Alberto is not Scott McLaughlin.
Yeah. And to me, that still feels really generous. So,
Yeah. What about the other car? What about Will and Alex? Will has not had a race win this season. He's not had a race win since the 2016 Bathurst 1000.
and yet he's third in the championship.
And yet he's third at the championship. He has been super consistent. He's picked up, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 podiums this year. Has been very consistently in the top 10. Has just not been able to put it all together to take a race win. And when I think it was the Sydney, the first race of the second weekend, when he got bested by the two Red Bull cars very late in the race on tyre strategy, he got out of the car and he was gutted. He was absolutely gutted.
It's been a long time since I've seen someone that emotionally distraught after not winning a race.
He was third. He was still third.
Yeah. But he was absolutely devastated. That was his race. That was his race until the Red Bull said, nah. He's actually, this is maybe his third lease on life, and he's taken it with both hands. I'm really impressed with what he's done this year. Really impressed.
Yeah, and like considering that, halfway through last year, he didn't have a drive at all. And, DJR has given him a new life, a second life, a third life, truth be told. And he's very comfortably third in the championship, the best of the rest. Driving with Alex Davison, his brother. In comparison, I'd say Alex is comparatively weaker as a co-driver, certainly compared to some of the names we were about to mention and some of the names we already have mentioned, particularly Warren Luff and Matt Campbell. What do we make of that as a pairing?
Well, for one, you got synergy, haven't you?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're going to get angry at your brother well, you might still get angry at your brother for binning the car, but it's a little bit easier to deal with. I think the big plus for this is the person on the mic. Engineering the thing, Ludo Lacroix.
Isn't he engineer for Anton?
Is he? Maybe did he jump across?
At the beginning of the season?
Did he? Maybe he did.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'm losing my marbles. I'm sorry.
You had marbles?
No. But I think... look. Alex is fine.
But that's the thing, though. It's just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, who's the better placed DJR car? 17 or 11?
ADP.
11? Yeah.
Yep.
I tend to agree. I've given this car 3 stars. I expect them to be in the top 10.
Oh, yeah, look. Inside the top 10, pushing for a 5, maybe.
Yeah. I think that's pretty...
The thing that's going to work in their favour, Will is not going to bin the car.
You hope.
No, he's not going to. He just doesn't crash cars.
This is true. He's not retired all season, so he's not had a problem all season. So, that's actually probably been the difference between him and Di Pasquale, where Di Pasquale has either had crashes or problems that have pulled him out of the race. Will has not.
And let's not forget, last year, Bathurst co-driving for Tickford came second.
Yes, with Cam Waters. Was he really wow, okay.
Yeah, remember he started the season with 23 red.
And then, got retained for the co-drive. There you go.
Yeah.
So, certainly recent Bathurst experience then.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the 2 DJR cars. Now, what order do we want to do this in as well? This is the final team in the grid. You all know who this is. Do we want to talk about the wildcard first or leave that till the end?
No, let's talk about the wildcard first because I think that's the smallest story of the 3.
Okay, well, here we go.
It's just crazy to see.
The mix of the youngest of the youth and the most of the experience. The 888 running a wild card for future Supercars driver, contracted Supercars driver, Brock Feeney, and the enforcer, Russell Ingall.
He's back.
This is everyone's best, worst nightmare.
Just imagine if it was Russell Ingall and Paul Morris.
Oh, don't say Paul Morris. Please, no. This is the true epitome of the old head and the new blood.
Oh, this is a master stroke by 888. And because Brock Feeney, he's been tearing it up in Super 2. He's by far the class of the field, right?
Yeah.
Putting him with a man who's got as much experience around this place and as much hard-nosed racing experience as Russell Ingall, who, let's not forget, drove around here a couple of years ago in a BMW at the 12-hour and wasn't actually terrible until he stuffed it.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. His last experience at Bathurst was putting it in the wall at the Dipper. And much to Mark Scaife's chagrin, I might add.
Yes, indeed. Those old friends. But the amount of knowledge and just mentoring that Russell Ingall is going to be able to impart on Brock and ahead of this weekend is going to be invaluable to him.
Absolutely. They're going to be in a very red super cheap car, which is going to be very, very cool. Kind of reuniting Ingall's old partnership with Super Cheap. Let's talk about Brock Feeney for a little while. Has been easily the best driver in Super 2. Has been entrusted with replacing Jamie Whincup for next year when Jamie Whincup retires after this race. That's a lot of pressure on a young man's shoulders going into, his debut in the main game. Because let's remember, he hasn't been a co-driver at Bathurst before. This is his Bathurst 1000 debut.
Let's remember, he's 19.
That's terrifying.
Yes. That's absolutely terrifying. He also, it's not his first race around Bathurst in his first Enduro. He actually raced in the 12-hour last year.
Yep. Alongside Aaron Cameron and Nick Percat taking home the victory in the invitational class. And I do want to add a little bit of a caveat to that. They took home the victory in that class by 100 laps because the other 4 cars in that class had problems. So,
this is true.
It is a class victory, sure. They did, finish the race, sure. It is a little bit muddied by the fact that, Tyler Everingham's car was written off before the race. Jeff Taunton suffered from engine problems all race. And, the other car hit the wall. I can't remember who was driving that car. Hit the wall twice at the metal grate and spent, hours in the pits. So...
But he also raced last year with James Courtney.
Yes, you are right. I did make that mistake.
So, racing last year, coming 10th as an 18-year-old at Bathurst. Holy crap.
There are big expectations on this kid.
Yeah. Triple Eight wouldn't have picked him. Jamie Whincup wouldn't have picked him to replace him if he didn't see something in him and think he could handle the pressure. So what are we expecting? He'll be fine.
What are we expecting from this wildcard then? You have one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, the Enforcer, and you have the hottest new prospect, the only driver stepping up from Super 2 to Supercars next year. What do we expect from this pairing? In a Triple Eight run car as well.
Look, I'm going to compare it to the Xbox wildcard of a few years ago. They finished...
Andy Priaulx and Matthias Ekstrom.
Yeah. They finished 10th. I think it was at the end of the day.
Yep.
If this car can achieve a similar result, if the Enforcer doesn't take a wrong turn because he's old and confused,
oof,
I reckon that should be their goal.
Top 10?
Top 10, keep it clean, bring it home. And most importantly for Brock, another race under his belt with the team he's going to race for next year. Can't hurt.
I would be astounded if they make a top 10. It would be incredible. I think their first priority has to be just getting it home.
Yeah.
And now the rest of the Triple Eight race engineering stable, and they really have been the team of the season. You have in the number 88, the greatest of all time, Jamie Whincup, driving with the greatest of all time, Craig Lowndes. But they have been clearly, well, Jamie at least, has been clearly second best to Shane van Gisbergen. The champion-elect has already sewn it up before the finale at Bathurst. Shane van Gisbergen driving alongside Garth Tander, one of the 2 combinations to survive from last year, and the reigning race winner. So, where do we want to start? Let's start with Whincup and Lowndes first.
Yep. And I think we need to take a minute to say, Jamie Whincup, it's been fun, mate.
It's been incredible.
Yeah. 7 championships, 6 Bathursts?
4 Bathursts.
4 Bathursts, sorry, yeah, and 4 he's thrown away.
Yeah.
He's moving out of full-time driving next year to become team principal of Triple Eight Racing as Roland Dane steps back. So, and he's obviously is part owner of the team now as well. So, and to pair him with Craig Lowndes for his final race, his final full-time race, so Craig Lowndes is a master around this place. Let's just not mince words there. This is the second best combination Triple Eight have got.
That's the thing, though. It's the second best combination that they've got, but it is still probably the second best combination in the field.
It's the second best combination I think we've seen at Bathurst for a long time.
Exactly right. The thing that has struck me about Whincup this season is that he has been clearly second best to his teammate. On the opportunity that Red Bull cars have been 1 and 2, only once has Whincup managed to have a race win, and that was at Simmons Plains, and that broke the streak for Van Gisbergen. He did take another win at the second Sydney event, the one where Van Gisbergen had all those penalties and the problems in the pits, etc. But when the Triple Eight cars have been on song, it has been Whincup playing second fiddle.
Yep.
And I wonder if that is why, come the last race in the Sydney, the third Sydney event, why he put on such a big fight, which ended up preventing both himself and Van Gisbergen from challenging Will Brown for the race win.
I think there's an element of that. But there's also an element in my mind of, I can't tell our future team boss to see the position.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, it just makes things a bit awkward in the debrief later. But this is, I got no words other than this car is comfortably going to finish on the podium.
I think so as well. I think this car is the only car I gave 4 stars to, and I think it's the only combination with the right mix of experience. Well, I mean, they've got experience out of the wahoo in this car.
Yeah. How long's Craig Lowndes been doing this for?
Craig Lowndes is equal second in the longest consecutive race starts at Bathurst, and he's been racing the Bathurst 1000 every single year since 1994, which is the year that I was born.
Yep.
It's the year that Macca Jones was born.
Which is crazy. It's the year after my fiance was born.
There you go.
So Craig Lowndes currently sitting on 7 Bathurst titles. I reckon this is possibly his last chance to get to number 8. So I don't know what happens next year.
I don't necessarily agree, because I will say that Jim Richards was racing and winning all the way into his 50s.
I guess the question for me is, what's going to happen next year? Jamie Whincup's going to be the team owner. Is he still going to do the Enduros?
Quite possibly.
Quite possibly. So then you have a choice. Garth Tander, Craig Lowndes.
Yeah. That's a difficult decision. That's a very difficult decision.
It's very much Sophie's choice, but Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. So you said on the podium?
Oh yeah, for sure. As long as nothing untoward happens.
And we did see something untoward happen last year with Whincup binning it very early on in the race, which was a surprise to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Like at a part of the track, you don't normally see a driver of his quality bin it.
Yeah, it was quite a surprise and kind of forced into an error by Rhoda Kostecki in that respect.
Yeah.
What about the sister car? What about Shane Van Gisbergen and Garth Tander, the number 97, the number 1, and because that's been the position that Shane has finished in most this year.
Oh, the championship was decided as early as Sandown.
I think when Van Gisbergen, with a broken collarbone, started 17th and ended up winning that race at Sandown, everyone was like, yeah, this is going to be a trend.
Hey, pack her up, boys. We're out of here.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
14 race wins.
14 out of 29 race wins.
And I want to add to that as well. They've not been drive away race wins. Very often, because of Shane's racecraft, they have been go long in the first stint, pit, seed track position, and wrap them all up. And he's had to work hard and do it the hard way, and it still works.
Yeah, which is crazy. Here's another stat. 80% of the races he's been on the podium this year.
That's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's had a season akin to his 2016 season where he won the Blancpain Endurance Championship alongside the Supercars Championship.
Yeah, it's been something just to absolutely admire. And his co-driver this year, Garth Tander. I've ragged on him in the past for being a little bit, easy to anger on track, I guess is a nice way of putting it. But put him in a car at Bathurst, he just turns into a different beast entirely.
He's aged like a fine wine. Between what he's been doing in the Australian GT Championship, what he's been doing in TCR, all the other and the media stuff that he's been a part of now, he's really aged like a fine wine. And he's, I think, a better co-driver than Craig Lowndes.
I really want to disagree with you, but I don't.
It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to disagree with that.
Yeah. Craig Lowndes once he stepped away from full-time driving hasn't had the same sort of success that GT's had. Like Craig's been racing in Porsche Carrera Cup, been okay, but not setting the world on fire. Whereas, like you said, Garth in the GT's been phenomenal. As a co-driver, last two starts, the first and the second, both with Shane Van Gisbergen. Hard to see that changing.
Yeah, and let's remember as well, at Sandown, that 2019 Sandown, that he was his first co-drive race. It was his first season with Shane Van Gisbergen. They were on track to win that, except for a suspension failure, literally 3 laps from the end.
Yeah, this is very true. So, I think we have to call this car the race favourite, don't we?
I gave it 5 stars. It's the only car I gave 5 stars. It's one of those things where Bathurst is a long and complicated and variable event, but given all of those things, given the quality of Triple Eight, given the quality of Van Gisbergen, given the quality of Garth Tander, given the engineering nous in the back room, given how good their pit stops are, given their strategy, given their tyre quality, given the fact that Van Gisbergen came from nowhere at the Sydney night race a week ago, and won. He was 15 seconds down with 3 laps left and won the race. He's in the form of his life. That team is an unstoppable force. I don't see any other team getting close. And the only team that I see getting close is Jamie Whincup and Craig Lowndes.
Yeah. The only issue this team's going to face is, I think, like you said, Jamie Whincup, but I do also think that DJR will, and we've seen DJR and at times take the fight to them, but only occasionally. And let's look at Bathurst 1, the first run we had. Shane Van Gisbergen brained the field, absolutely destroyed them.
Well, but even still, he wasn't the fastest driver on track that weekend. It was Cameron Waters. That's the thing. That's the thing. Even when they haven't been the fastest car, they've brained the field. Even when Anton De Pasquale is leading qualifying by 3/4 of a second, Van Gisbergen wins the race. Triple Eight win the race. Triple Eight win the Sydney Swing. They win the Sydney Cup by having the best results over those 4 weekends. Even when they are struggling, they win races.
Yeah, they just get it. They just know how to get it done, and that's a sign of the stellar team. And look, this car's going to win if all goes to plan.
Yeah, and it's hard to say anything different, really.
And they reckon it's going to rain.
Really? Is that so? That was the next thing I was going to ask. We've never seen a Bathurst 1000 in the summer. It has been it's been a very weird summer so far. Let's make that very clear. For a lot of people will still very vividly remember, despite the fact that COVID has been the headline for the last 2 years, people will still vividly remember the discussions around the bushfires in Australia across the 2020 or 2019-2020 summer, where that was by far the hottest, driest, most dangerous conditions, the most dangerous summer that I've ever seen in my life. It has been a very weird summer, a very weird year so far in terms of the seasons, and it is going to be, and has still been, wet. Yeah,
and like there's parts of regional New South Wales around Bathurst are dealing with flooding at the moment, quite significant flooding. But the point I was going to make was, what does Shane Van Gisbergen drive the best in? Wet conditions.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I mean, to be fair, you can pretty much say that Van Gisbergen drives the best in all conditions.
But I think the gap's even more so in the wet.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the reason for the impending wet conditions is this weather system called La Nina, which exaggerates it actually kind of flips the conditions across the Pacific Ocean. So, while we deal in Australia with severely wet conditions, flooding, and significantly increased rainfall, over in South America, in specifically Peru, they'll be dealing with, more drought conditions. So, if you are listening from South America, I hope that you are able to make it through this summer without too much of an issue, because I hate the wet summers. I want it to be hot and warm and sunny. But they actually did announce, the Australian Bureau of Meteorology actually said we are officially in a La Nina system now. So it is going to be relatively cool, but more significantly rainy, which is a very difficult combination if it strikes Bathurst.
Yes. But although I do think back to a few years ago, we had the wet first half of the race. All the co-drives with 70 laps were some of the best driving I've ever seen.
That was 2017, yeah, absolutely. I still think that was one of my favourite endurance races ever.
Yeah, we just see them going like they do. If drivers who are not in the car for that long, doing what they did on the wet conditions, on some of them on dry tyres even.
It was it's amazing. Very impressive indeed.
But I think what we're saying is 97 to win.
97 to win.
Yep.
You can't. I don't think there's any team that comes close, and especially with Scott McLaughlin not making the trip and not being able to co-drive with Di Pasquale, I think that's the only other combination that would be as scary as Garth Tander and on current form Shane Van Gisbergen. But I don't think anyone comes close.
No.
What about the top five, Kiwi?
In top five, you have to put the sister 888 car.
Yep.
The 88. One of the DJR cars. I'm actually gonna maybe surprise you and put the 17 up there.
You are very predictable.
I think actually I'm gonna put both there, 11 and 17.
Yep.
And I do think, honestly, Chaz
and Lee Holdsworth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. The only addition / question mark I'd add is Nick Percat and Dale Wood, and they're really the only, and then maybe an Erebus car, but I think that's a very much an outside shot for an Erebus car.
Yeah, but if the weather hits, I think all bets are off outside.
Outside of 97, this is the thing. The weather hits, we don't know what's going to happen, except that 97 will still be at the head of the field.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, damn. Any other comments? Any other things you want to mention before we make one or two announcements and then wrap up?
Should we talk about the support races? Because holy crap, 6 days of racing and we got the 8 support categories, and we should talk about some of the drivers we're going to see in those categories.
I think let's mention some of the drivers, and you've done a bit more research into this than I have, so I think you should take this away.
Yeah, so Australian GT are going to be joining us this weekend as part of the races. We got Roberto Meri, who's also driving the Super 5000s. Yes, that Roberto Meri. He's been driving S Super 5000. He's been working behind the scenes at one of the teams. He got offered a drive, and he's going to be co-driving in the number 17. What do you meme, Audi?
Oh, classic.
As well. Also, Chris Meese is joining us with the Yasser Shahin.
So he's replacing Garth Tander for the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The Groves are driving in the Pro-Am class as well. And this is Shane Van Gisbergen would normally be driving in this with Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim. He's out. Any other big names there?
Well, I think it's important to mention that Peter Hackett is replacing Van Gisbergen in that car. And Peter Hackett is a very important name in the Australian GT scene. And has taken home a few championships alongside... Oh, who was he driving with? Dom Story in the past. Yes. So while Peter Hackett might not be a name that people outside of Australia recognise, he's certainly a very, very good GT driver and part of the Triple Eight and Eggleston family for a long time. So look for that car to still remain competitive.
Yeah, and the other Pro-Am entry from Audi is Liam Talbot, Fraser Ross, another strong car as well. So that's a 14 car grid, I think it was, with 13 GT3s and one GT4. So Mark Griffiths, congratulations, you won your class.
Woo!
Also, Super 5000 is going to be an 11 car field. Roberto Meri is going to be in there as well. Another driver, John Martin, is another Australian some people may know who listen to this podcast. Lewis Leeds as well. He's going to be racing in the S5000 this weekend. And Nathan Hearn. Now, he's a name that's been mentioned a lot as an up-and-comer in Australian Motorsports, so keep an eye out for him as well. Teammate to James Golding.
So they're going to be the two big ticket items. Of course, there's also going to be TCR. There's going to be Trans Am. The Super Utes that are actually good again. They've dropped the platform down and put a V8 back in it, so it actually looks and sounds like it almost like it used to.
Yep. And also Porsche Carrera Cup for the 26 car field.
Oh my gosh! And they do a 100-kilometer race as well.
They're doing 4 races a weekend. It's a double header, so there were going to be 2 30-minute races, a 40-minute race, and a 25-minute race.
Nice, that'll be good. Super 2 are going to be there, so Brock Feeney will get a few more laps on track. Zach Best, Jaden Ojeda, they'll be out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Toyota 86 are going to be out there on track.
Yep. And the Trans Ams, which is great fun.
Yeah,
sound meaty.
Look for Ben Bargwanna, son of Jason Bargwanna, to be very, very high up in that championship as well.
Yep. And there's a few drivers doing double duty, like we mentioned. There's a few co-drivers in TCR. Chaz Mostert as well. And he's going to be in the first race on the Wednesday. All he needs to do is finish 7th, and he's got the championship there. So all up, 6 days of racing, 5 days of which we broadcast. However you find it, get on a stream. It's going to be amazing fun.
Absolutely. And I believe you can access the support categories through SuperView as well. So if you are able to do that, make sure that you do, even just for a little bit, because they will be pure quality. So Bathurst, it is a week away from when this podcast is going to be out. So if you are listening on the Sunday, set your alarms if you're not in our corner of the world. And while you're doing that, make sure you're using the racingline.app to let you know when the races are on. It's very much later in the year compared to where it normally would be. So
and later in the day as well, the race starting just after 12.
So that'll be something that you'll have to get your head around. Of course, all the daylight savings changeovers have been done now. We don't actually have the daylight savings changeover in the middle of the weekend anymore, so thank God for that. So thank you very much to the racingline.app on iOS and on the Android store, the Google Play Store. And a little bit of an announcement for something that we're going to be trying next year or late this year for Endurance Chat. So, Kiwi, as you made mention, you're going to be very busy next year with a new bub on the way.
How do you change nappies again?
Brilliant. So what I've sort of tried to do is, keeping in mind that life is going to be changing quite a lot for you, and your contribution to this podcast is going to be changing a little bit as well. We're going to absolutely give this a red hot go. We're going to do Flood and Kiwi Talk Sports. So every 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to get together for about an hour, and we're just going to talk about sports, whatever we've been watching, because you digest a lot of sports. You're a big sports fan. I digest a lot of sports.
Yes. And some of the sports we've talked about in the last 12 months just privately include biathlon, cycling, sailing, underwater rugby.
That one's going to be very interesting to get that. But you're big into the rugby union as a New Zealander, of course, and the America's Cup, because New Zealand sailing has done very well with that. Any sport that I watch, I love talking about it. I managed to get a bunch of friends out to the women's cricket, the women's T20 competition during the week, and I've got so many opinions to share about that. And I think it'll be just a nice low-key way to keep you, Chris, involved and keep you as part of the podcast, because we love to have you on the podcast, and it's something I've been wanting to do for a little while. So thank you for joining me in this endeavour. And of course, we'll be talking about the cricket in the next few months, because it's going to be Ashes just around the corner.
And we'll still talk about motorsport stuff. We'll throw in some supercar stuff as well in Australian Motorsports. So there'll still be a motorsport flair to it all. It's just, broadening your horizons a bit. And who knows, you might learn something. And hopefully it's still pretty engaging content for you all.
And that's the most important thing. Well, it's an important thing. I do hope that we still keep our good bantery flair going, and it's something that's interesting to listen to. And yeah, let us know what you think, what you'd like us to touch on, and if there's anything specific that you'd like us to talk about or get into, let us know. But most probably, it's just going to be us talking about all the sports that we like to watch and want to have an audience for.
Yeah, basically. But hey, if you've got a sport you want us to talk about, I can do some research.
Hey, I'll watch basically anything, truth be told.
Yeah.
Except golf.
Even golf.
Okay, you can talk about golf.
I enjoy the Masters.
There you go. So even golf, apparently. Even golf. And on that note, thank you very much for joining me on our yearly look into the Supercars Bathurst 1000, Kiwi.
Not a problem at all. Thank you for bringing me along for the ride.
Always a pleasure. And can you believe that 6 years ago when we did our Bathurst 12-hour preview that we'd be sitting here right now?
God, no.
Whose mistake
a wild
was
ride? Was it yours for doing this or mine for getting us together at Bathurst?
Yes to all of the above. It's everyone's fault. And on that note, thank you,
Gigi, for getting him a job.
Oh, blimey, don't even... That's another thing. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you are able to tune in. I hope you're able to enjoy the event, and I hope you learn something and have a bit of an idea and you win your local Works Bathurst sweepstakes, because that's a thing that people do, of course. I've been Michael Zalavari. Thank you very much for listening. Peace out!
Are we talking about their third car?
They have a third car?
Isn't the wild card Erebus?
No. Well, that was going to be the Murphy and Stanaway car.
Oh yeah. Okay, we'll cut that on post. No, I just had a mental blank.
In before I leave that in, and everyone, because of course you leave it in.